Viktor Orban should have been unbeatable. 16 years in power, a loyal media machine, courts stacked in his favor, an electoral map redrawn to protect his party, and in the final stretch, even US Vice President J.D. Vance flew to Budapest to campaign for him.
And in order to achieve prosperity, that's the kind of leadership that is needed.
Everything about Hungary's political system had been designed to keep Orban in power forever. And yet, in April 2026, he lost. Not narrowly, not controversially, but by one of the largest margins in Hungary's post-communist history. So how did the man who designed a system to be unbeatable lose anyways? To understand how Orban lost this election, you must understand the machine he built. By 2026, Hungary's elections were still competitive on paper, but the playing field was anything but level. State television, funded by public money, had become a direct campaign arm for Fidesz. Government advertising flowed overwhelmingly into pro-government outlets, starving independent media, and helped wipe it out almost everywhere outside of Budapest. In much of rural Hungary, the evening news did not sound like journalism. It sounded more like a Fidesz press release. Then there was the map. Orban's government had redrawn the electoral system to dilute opposition votes in cities and give more weight to conservative rural districts. In previous elections, this allowed Fidesz to turn less than half of the national vote into a two-thirds parliamentary supermajority. The opposition had always made that machine even stronger. For years, political opponents were divided, disorganized, and easy to caricature. Budapest liberals, Brussels puppets, people who understand NGOs better than ordinary Hungarians. That was the system Orban entered 2026 with. For 16 years, whenever things got bad, Orban had one move. He changed the subject. His campaign had one central message. A vote for the opposition is a vote to send young Hungarian men to war in Ukraine. Billboards went across the nation. The imagery was stark, and from a tactical standpoint, you can understand the logic behind it. The devastating war in Ukraine was real, and Hungary shares a direct border with it, and fear had always driven voters towards Fidesz before. But by 2026, Hungarians were already living through a crisis, just not the one Orban was talking about. Hungary's inflation had hit nearly 25%, which is the highest in the EU, and 17 billion euros of development funds, money specifically earmarked to build hospitals, roads, and schools, were sitting frozen in Brussels. And here's what made it politically devastating. Those weren't problems imposed on Hungary from the outside. Rather, they were consequences of Orban's own decisions. His government has spent years deepening Hungary's dependency on Russian oil and gas, a deliberate choice he publicly defended even after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Over 90% of Hungary's oil was coming directly from Moscow, and when the energy prices spiked, Hungary felt it harder than almost anywhere else in Europe. The lack of EU funds wasn't arbitrary either. They froze due to the same democratic backsliding Orban had pursued to consolidate power. The stacked courts, controlled media, dismantled checks and balances, tools that had made him unbeatable, had also cost Hungary billions in development money. Consider Lorik Mészáros. A decade ago, he was just a gas fitter from Orban's hometown, but by 2025, he was Hungary's richest man. A towering fortune of over 3 billion euros, built almost entirely through government contracts. And according to the Financial Times, he was one of 13 associates who had collectively received around 40% of all Hungarian government money since 2010. For years, many voters had treated stories like this as background noise, but when families were struggling to heat their homes, the numbers stopped feeling abstract. Orban's entire political identity rested on one key idea. He was the only man standing between Hungary and chaos. The threats were always beyond the borders, and he was always the shield. But how do you control the courts, the media, the budget, and the electoral map for 16 years, and then blame someone else for the results? At some point, voters stopped asking who is threatening Hungary and started asking who's been running it. On April 12th, Tisza won 138 seats, while Fidesz had only 55. A turnout hit nearly 80%, a margin not seen since Hungary's post-communist history. Orban conceded the same night. The system built to make him unbeatable resulted in the greatest defeat because, in the end, no political machine, however well constructed, can protect you from your own record.